Hi everyone, my name is Kyle Shiflett. I'm here to inform you all about hurricanes. One early morning in the United States, the Gulf Coast experienced one of the most horrific storms known to man. This storm's name was Katrina. Katrina struck across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and in its path it caused up to $100 billion worth of damages, not to mention all the precious lives that were lost. So, does hurricanes affect people that live off the coastline? The first thing I want to talk to you all about is what is a hurricane. A hurricane is a form of a tropical storm, and actually in this tropical storm they have many thunderstorms. And the only thing that separates a hurricane from a tropical storm is the wind speed. A hurricane has a wind speed up from 74 miles per hour and above. And this brings up the different categories. As you can tell, there's a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. And 1 starts off at 74 miles per hour, and 5 ends at 156 and above. Well, another thing is hurricanes are given a name at a certain point, and at this point it's 39 miles per hour. And after this, they actually rotate these names every other hurricane, which is a good thing because in the 1980s they actually had conflict with geographical issues and concerns. And in order to fix these concerns and issues, they needed to implement something in this sort of fashion. So this kind of got rid of the geographical issues and concerns that we had. How are hurricanes formed? Hurricanes have many different aspects about them. It starts off with the warm and moist air and water that hurricanes need to be formed to begin with. Then the warm air is recorded to move up into the sky, and the cool air begins to move down. But once the warm air hits into the clouds, it begins to cool off and swirl, and at this point is considered a hurricane. Then another thing that I thought that was very interesting is that hurricanes have to form near the equator. And the reason they form near the equator is because they need the warm ocean water to fuel their engine. And north of the equator, which is up here, hurricanes actually rotate counterclockwise. And south of the equator, which is right here, hurricanes actually rotate clockwise. And that's something that I thought that was very interesting. And it kind of does not differ whether one is stronger than the other. This is something that was an interesting fact that I thought you should know. The devastation of hurricanes. Well, we all know that hurricanes cause a lot of devastation, whether it is property damage or loss of life. If we have property damage, which we know it's going to be something simple as if a category 1 or 2, which is minor damages, hits, we're going to have stuff as if signs gone or little house property because of the initial storm surge. But 3, 4, and 5, we're going to have something that's more catastrophic. We're going to have something that's initially just life-threatening and it's going to really affect us, whether our home, our belongings, our loved ones, our cars, whether we transport back and forth, something that your kids might play on, whether it's a trampoline or a playhouse. It's something that we really look forward to having, and something like a major hurricane can really just hurt us deep down. And I kind of want to show y'all one thing that I thought that was interesting, and it kind of brings up the initial talk of storm surges and the initial impact of a storm surge. A storm surge is the initial impact. Hurricane Katrina's storm surge actually killed 1,500 people at initial impact, and that's a lot of people. And something that they would have is a shallow continental shelf. Their continental shelf, which you can see on the left, if you can see that, is a house being trampled by water because of the shelf is shallow. And then on the right side is a steep, and you only really see a steep continental shelf in California. And that's the reason they have bigger waves out there, though, is because they actually have that. So that's something that I thought that was interesting too. And this brings up the summary, because many people don't understand how devastating hurricanes can be, and the initial impact of a storm surge, and just many details and facts about what is a hurricane and how are they formed, and the devastation they cause. And I think it's very important for people to know and be informed about. Well, the first question I asked at the beginning after my initial input was, how can hurricanes affect people that live off the coastline? Well, here's some interesting facts that I've kind of put together that I thought that was cool. Was until 1990 until now, population has increased 32% in the Gulf Coast. 50% of economic growth is actually located on the Gulf Coast. 72% of ports and 22% of major roads in the Gulf Coast are all below 4 feet elevation, which could bring back a shallow continental shelf, which could be devastating like we saw in Louisiana and Mississippi. Well, as I recently stated, the storm surge can affect that, but hurricanes can affect people like us that live off the coastline, because if it hits the Gulf Coast, as I mentioned, all these major things are located in the Gulf Coast. So if it affected us as a 72% of ports, I'm sure these ports are getting our imports and exports. Well, if it gets our imports and exports, then it could shut off a lot of us, and that's really what makes the United States who we are today. Is because we get imports and exports. So if you shut that off, it kind of takes the bone from the dog, and just really, it affects us in the long run. That's just not a good thing. So really, before you think that it don't affect people like us that live in Georgia or Alabama or wherever you come from, just know that it does, and it could affect us dramatically. And just look back at the statement, the facts that I provided, and we can really tell. This is my bibliography. You can see all the sources that I've contained and figured out and took from. And I appreciate your time in watching my video, and hopefully this helps you out on how hurricanes are formed and just the initial facts about it. And I appreciate you. Thank you.